I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. I'm so excited to introduce our guest this week. You guys know how much I love this girl. You know I can't wait to have her on the show all the time and talk to her any chance I possibly can get. And she is returning. You know her work from Bloody Elbow. We briefly had a column together at My MMA News, and she continues to put out excellent work. Let's welcome back Kristen King. Kristen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's not sunny in Florida, which is kind of a bummer, but I'm happy to be here. You guys can be my sunshine. That's fine. You know, I love hanging out with you guys. So we get to shoot the shit, talk some stuff. So let's get into it. I missed last week. I was sad about last week, but I'm here now. Who cares about last week?
Yeah, last week we're just happy you're okay. Like
yeah,
that's all. It's an emergency situation, and we are just happy that you are alive and well. And yes, Kristen is here. Happiness has followed. All right, let's go ahead and introduce the next two gentlemen on the panel. You know them very well. We love them just as much, and they are here every week. We don't have to introduce them, but we love them so much we got to do it every single time. The jack of all trades, who has mastered them all. First up on deck, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, my homie Ben Duffy. What's up, man?
I'm doing real well. I share the general sentiment that I am glad Kristen is okay, and I'm extra glad that she's here with us today. You know, if you're watching our show for the first time or you're watching for the first time with Kristen here, you may think she's here to class up the joint and we're all sitting up a little straighter in our chairs, but that is not true because she is the most hardcore and shit-talkiest of us all, and if anything, we're intimidated.
Yeah, she is depraved, and I love it. And of course, we've got the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. What's up, man?
Yeah, I guess we're going 3 for 3 on the love for Kristen King. I should admit something. When I was watching the UFC 272 broadcast, I was hoping for a freak injury, a toenail get bent back, a something, so that when she came on the show, that we could marvel over the injury. Not that I wish any harm over any UFC fighters, but sometimes these things happen in MMA. Speaking of sometimes these things happen in MMA, this wasn't a good week for stats. The biggest fights that mattered, whatever. So I'll throw you the stat, and the stat is 20, because Rafael dos Anjos, who won in the co-main event, won his 20th UFC fight, which is, there's only 10 people that have done 10 men that have done that so far, because women joined the UFC in 2013. Not a lot of fighters have done that. So he's sneakily putting together a Hall of Fame level career, and he's not slowing down. And I hope we get to talk about him later. But 20 UFC wins for Rafael dos Anjos. That's something.
Definitely. RDA is certainly going to be a topic of discussion this week. Big win for him on Saturday night. But unfortunately, we've got to start the show off with a much more serious topic. Some bad news. Cain Velasquez, UFC heavyweight champion, considered one of the greatest fighters of all time. If you have to be living under a rock to not have heard something about the situation, if you're a hardcore fan enough to be watching a show like this, he is now sitting in jail in San Jose for attempted murder and various weapons charges and endangering the public, if I'm not mistaken on what the exact charges are, stemming from this crazy story of supposedly his daughter. It was just an unnamed female relative that was a minor that was molested by someone that worked at the daycare center, a family-owned daycare center, and he, in likely a fit of rage, went after this man once he was let out on bail, took some shots at him after some sort of high-speed chase in the streets of San Jose, ended up missing his target and shot the man's stepfather who was driving the car instead. It's a very complicated situation. And one thing that the MMA community has done is respond very loudly with the mantra to free Cain. Definitely understanding the circumstances of the situation, but I think we need to take a bit of a deep dive into this. Kristen, I'll start with you. Do you support the free Cain movement that's going on right now?
Man, it's it's really hard because I empathize so much with Cain Velasquez in his situation, because being the only girl in the family, like before I came along, it was just my brothers and my parents. And when I finally did come along, they made sure, everyone in the family made sure that if something were to ever happen to the little girl of the family, they'd feel sorry for that person because they have no idea what they'd do. And this is a prime example of that kind of promise, especially to, it may be his daughter, it could be a niece or something. I don't think they ever explicitly said who it was that had been molested by this person. And it's hard. It really is hard, because I'm trying to ask someone to think rationally, logically, morally, when it comes to a situation where you've just found out that the person who has molested children 100 times over has been released on bail and is free to go. How do you expect me to ask someone to take a step back and think, oh, well, I'll let the justice system handle this, when the justice system has just basically said, we're going to let this person walk free and then take it from there eventually? And then what if justice never does come? You know, what if we're leaving this to a situation where this could be buried for months, maybe years? This person may never face justice. So I can only imagine how hard it must be for Cain, or what he may have been thinking in that moment. And maybe he wasn't. I think you said he was probably in like a fit of rage at that moment. I 1000% believe it, because if this person was released and allowed to just go out into the public and continue living his life while the lives of children are being ruined on account of his disgusting actions, I understand completely. Having said that, I wish it would have gone a different way, because when you add into the mix a high-speed chase, you are recklessly driving and missing the intended target. You're shooting so wildly, you don't even get the person that you're trying to get. It becomes an issue, obviously. It becomes a really big issue, because you're not only putting yourself in danger, but you're putting a lot of other people around you who may not have signed up for that situation. They didn't know what was going on and who he was after, whatever. They didn't agree to be part of that situation. So that's where it kind of becomes really sucky. But I support Cain. I do, but it's hard when you do something like that. And I know for a fact it's not going to be free Cain, unfortunately. I know that he's going to have to face some type of consequence for this. I'm just hoping that it's taken into account the situation and the brevity of that situation, considering what he may have been thinking or feeling in that moment when the person who molested someone very close to him got away, pretty much.
Very, very well said, Kristen. Ben, I kind of want to, because we're both fathers, I want to kind of table we have to say for just a little bit longer. Jay, I'd like for you to speak your piece on this. Do you support the Free Cain movement? No,
I don't. And I say that as an attorney, and not as a father, because I'm not a father, but as a family member, as somebody that can empathize and can think through this. I'm not the kind of person who is cold and unfeeling to not understand to a degree the justification. But unfortunately for Cain Velasquez, this isn't something that in the legal community called sudden passion, which is a fit of rage, you come home and your wife is committing adultery, so you kill. It's not something like that. This is a Cain Velasquez, according to the facts, that got a handgun, got in his car, tracked the guy down, and chased him down. And so because of that situation, it turns from a sudden, I found out about this thing, I'm going to take action because he's in the room, to a premeditated chase, an attack. And because of that, Cain Velasquez is in a very, very difficult predicament, coupled with the fact that he is a former UFC heavyweight champion and is he a current? I don't know if he's a current or was a current pro wrestler at the time. But because of the circumstances, he was denied bail, and I believe his next hearing is in April. And unless there's some change to the charges, he's going to remain in custody until then. And it's what he did and how he did it. And Joe Rogan, of all people, I know who the hell would, after we talked about what Joe Rogan had been saying, said something along the lines of it, and I hated what Rogan said. He said, I wish Cain had just, I'm paraphrasing here, that Rogan said that he wished Cain had just tracked the guy down and beat him to death, or something like that, I believe was the headline that came out. And in terms of that approach, if Cain had just physically accosted him one-on-one, it would have been a very different situation than him driving down a street, firing shots off, and shooting the wrong man. I mean, unfortunately for Cain, the way he went about the situation puts him in grave legal danger, the kind that he'll be put away. I can't imagine that he'll escape prison time. And you feel for the guy, because I don't know what I would do if I found out my sister, if that happened to my sister, would I be able to keep my faculties about me? Well, I can't say, because I don't know, because I haven't been placed in that situation. But trying to think of it objectively and legally, unfortunately, it's just the worst thing Cain could have done, practically. Going into a high-speed chase and putting other civilians and uninvolved people at risk, and actually striking somebody and committing an assault with a deadly weapon to somebody that had no involvement in this situation, allegedly, is just a big issue that I don't believe can be overcome. And it's sad to see, and I appreciate the community rallying around their fighter, but I don't know if this is something that you should rally around right now. Let's let this come out. Like, I know there was a quick situation on Twitter where people were rampantly speculating about what they thought. There were some media members, including friends of the show, that were like, oh, maybe CTE played a factor. Like, whoa. Let's pump all the brakes on this until the facts come out. Because obviously it sounds like CTE had nothing to do with this, given the new facts that came out. It was a lot of rushes to judgment, a lot of issues that came out, and everyone needs to take a step back. I don't think this is the kind of time and situation where people need to get involved. There shouldn't be a campaign to free him, given the circumstances, because this is unfortunately rose to the level from the crime of passion that you always hear about, to somebody who wanted to track somebody down and kill them. And that's something that you can't abide by, even with the circumstances and who he was targeting, which I don't want to get into details about whether people that commit those acts should be around anymore. But, the law is the law, and Cain is in a pickle now.
Ben, I definitely wanted you and I to have some sort of dialogue about this in particular, because, if it's true that this was his daughter, that was wronged in the first place, man, as a father, I have a very difficult time seeing how you act rationally in that situation. When you have children, it's like your entire world becomes centered around them, and it's literally like your heart is on your sleeve, and their most vulnerable parts of you are just out exposed in the world, and all the ugliness and all the bad things that can happen to them. Therefore, it can happen to you, and it's just like something that hits you to the core, to the point where, like, since becoming a father, where I watch the news, like it's difficult to not get emotional. Like I personalize everything around my children. So watching the news story just kind of unfold and more details coming out, it's like, man, how do you not feel for the guy? How do you not feel for him? But at the same time, I think to myself, man, the way he went about it, to endanger the public. And I'm thinking, like, man, if my family were just out for a drive and one of those stray bullets went into my family's vehicle and struck one of my children or struck my wife, I'd want to kill Cain Velasquez. I'd want to keep this cycle of revenge going. Ben, am I talking crazy right now? What was going through your mind as a father when you heard the news?
Well, I agree that being a parent changes your perspective on all of this. You know, John F. Kennedy once said that to have a child is to give fate a hostage. You know, like there are things that you cannot help but care about, and they're no longer under your control. You know, you can't protect your children from everything. I'm not saying that applies to this particular situation, but for one thing, the person that Cain was trying to shoot is an alleged child molester that was working his way through the criminal justice system. I mean, we either believe in the rule of law or we don't. If summary execution of accused child molesters is okay, that really changes our society on a fundamental level. And I'm a parent. If somebody accused of molesting one of my children was let go free or let go, you know, back into society, I'm not sure I should say this openly, but I would probably take the law into my own hands at that point. But I like to think that I would let the legalities play out. And this would be a lot less morally ambiguous if Cain had just walked up on the guy on the street corner, put one between his eyes, and just dropped the gun and thrown his hands up. I would probably be saying free Cain at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But he got in a high-speed chase. He shot a guy that isn't the accused child molester. It's his father or stepfather. And the flip side of this is, if I knew somebody was coming to my home to shoot one of my kids, regardless of what my kid was accused of, I'd be getting them the fuck out of there. You know, and I don't think that should get me shot. So as much as I empathize with Cain, I think he's going to rightly get a pretty severe penalty for this. Like, at least based on the facts as we have them so far.
Yeah. I want to point the audience's attention to a great article that hit MMA Media, I think MMA Mania, excuse me, a few days ago by Jesse Holland. The title, Free Cain Velasquez, former UFC champ, a sympathetic figure, but certainly no hero. I think that's about as intelligent of an analysis that we can have of this entire situation, because this is incredibly complex. Ben, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that this man is an alleged child molester, because we do have to take into consideration the law itself and letting things play out. And you look at, you know, I'm sitting here with a black power fist on, you know, on my hoodie. So I can talk to you all day about wrongly accused people of color and, you know, DNA evidence changing the way convictions were handed out, and so many things overturned, and people who spent years on death row to find out that they were falsely accused. And a lot of those cases, the general public sentiment was a lynching, was to go and take up revenge. And we would have been, the society itself would have been killing people who had nothing to do with the crimes in question. So that is something to strongly consider here. And I agree with you, Ben, and Jay and Kristen. Like this, for me, the biggest problem is not necessarily the complex, you know, relationship with the criminal justice system, but it's the fact that you involve the general public in this. I'm, you know, as awful as it may sound, I'm very much inclined to agree with Joe Rogan, because I wish that he ran up on this guy. If he had this just unquenchable thirst for blood, for this man's blood, scoop him up in a double leg, slam him into the concrete, and elbow him until his brain matter scatters across the concrete. That sounds a lot better than firing a weapon in public, high-speed chase, could cause several car accidents and all sorts of chaos and carnage to people who have literally nothing to do with the situation and are just there. And as far as the stepfather is concerned, Ben, I do wholeheartedly agree with you about, hey, if it was my kid that someone was coming after, hey, we're getting the hell up out of there. And you know, and that's what it is. But if I'm remembering the facts of this case correctly, I believe that stepfather and the target's mom ran the daycare. And if I'm not mistaken, it would, at least the things I was reading was implying that they were aware of these allegations against him, and this went on for a long time. Right. If it is true that the mother and the stepfather enabled this behavior, and they opened their doors to someone who was harming the children that are placed in their care, he deserved to get shot. He deserved it, and that bullet should have gone somewhere else, somewhere where it sticks with him a lot longer. I'm just more upset about that bullet being fired through the path of the public, on its way to that car. So, any other thoughts before we table this? I'm sure this conversation is going to be picked up at some point, because this is a legal process that will be playing out, and we'll talk about things as they unfold and more details come around. But before we table it for the day, anything else we'd like to get off our chest?
Well, it's not that I'm getting it off my chest, but there was an additional set of facts that I was able to just pull up here when we were talking about it, that apparently he was the man accused and charged. He had been charged with a count of lewd and lascivious behavior. What was his name? Goulart. When his mother and stepfather were in the car, they were on their way to pick up the ankle monitor for him, because that was a condition of his release, was that he would have an ankle monitor. I believe he would be under, as they say, house arrest. So that's when Cain ran up on them as they were on their way to law enforcement office.
Okay.
So I don't think they were fleeing Cain. I think this was just that's what makes it the premeditated part for Cain Velasquez, because he knew where they were going and hunted them down. That's the best way I can say it, because I don't know how he would be able to locate somebody and drive up on them and find their car, find their truck or whatever it was, and chase and start shooting at them. This wasn't a one shot, one arm wound. This was a multiple shots Cain Velasquez shooting while driving, I guess. I don't know exactly. I think he had struck the facts say that he crashed into the truck a couple times and was shooting while driving, or was he shooting pulled over and shot? I don't know the specifics there. But
sorry, continue, Jay.
No, I was just, but that isn't as important as the fact that it was all, in a live, regular, everyday street.
No. Say I'm kind of inclined to think that this wasn't, that he didn't necessarily target him as they're going to the police station or parole office or whatever to pick up the ankle monitor. I imagine that he just pulled up to their house
and followed them
there, and they could have been going to the grocery store. It wouldn't have mattered. He was just going to get off whatever he needed to get off. Ironically, like, had he waited a few hours, the guy would have just been in the house, and this would have been a much different situation, much more like the situation, where we envision him just going up specifically to this guy. If he's under house arrest, he can't leave. Right. So where he is, and you already knew where he lived. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he just already knew where this family lived.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and even if he did quote unquote hunt them down, it wouldn't have taken much more than a simple search of public records to find the home address of the family that owns the daycare center. Unless of course that daycare center was attached to the home. That's a whole nother story. But
wasn't it run out of the home?
If it was,
I don't know.
Okay, and if it was run out of the home, then
that's what worries me, because I'm like, he's getting house arrest.
So he just
to the same house where he's alleged to have committed all of these crimes against children. Like,
well, he also has to stay away from children as a condition of release.
Well, yeah. So it can't be run out the house unless the business is shut down or something.
I was going to say, is there a cease of operations on the daycare until all of this is resolved?
Yeah, and then we're talking about someone who probably shouldn't be let on the streets anyway, if these are the crimes that he's accused of. But
I have to imagine if a daycare worker was accused of lewd and lascivious behavior to children, that daycare would be shut down. pending
pending
the
an
investigation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the free Cain movement. I get it. I sympathize. I just can't ride with it based on the exact circumstances. Like, I think this whole situation and the free Cain movement is just making things too simplistic. And MMA Twitter is very, very prone to simplify things to where you lose a lot of the necessary nuance to totally understand the situation. This is not something for, user 0513 to weigh in on and actually have anything intelligent to say. This is more than 140 characters worth of debate, worth of discussion and back and forth. So I'm inclined to kind of leave it here for the moment, and if we have any more developments, we'll pick it back up. So anything else before we get into 272? All right, let's rock. So now, of course, the big show that was in Vegas, UFC 272, Colby Covington with a very dominant decision win over Jorge Masvidal. I mean, I hate to pat myself on the back, but it feels pretty damn good to pat myself on the back. And I think everybody here should pat themselves on the back, because this fight went literally exactly the way we talked about last week, down to a lot of the minutia of detail, what was going to happen. With that in mind, did we learn anything about either one of these men based on the results?
The only thing we learned is that ESPN needs to get its stuff together to actively lose a chunk of the broadcast. It was about a minute's worth of round two in the middle of a grudge match, right after a groin strike, and we went, what do we do? And I actually had to make note of it in the Churdog play-by-play. That is the most significant takeaway that I had of this fight. I didn't learn anything about Colby Covington. Didn't learn anything about Jorge Masvidal. I already knew that one of them was this great in the division, and Jorge Masvidal may be on the decline, but he also was facing top guys in the division. So there wasn't a lot of big things that could have happened. If Jorge had starched him, that would have been huge, because Jorge would have beaten a guy with a chin that's notorious for being granite. If Covington had finished him, it would have been okay. He grounded him out. So there wasn't a lot that could come from it. And this was about the most, all right, it happened. And I guess I'll pass a question as you guys want to talk about this. Pass a question to you. Is this the kind of fight you would ever watch again? This fight?
No, it went pretty much as expected. If anything, I was surprised at kind of how flat Masvidal looked. I figured in the early going, he would have looked sharper and presented more of a threat to Covington, but he really didn't. And his one or two impressive moments of offense happened when it was too late in the fight. He was getting tired, and he himself admitted that just he was too tired. He was too worried about giving up his 17th takedown or whatever it would have been to really capitalize on the situation when he had Covington hurt. So it was pretty much how we drew it up, only not even as exciting or compelling. So I can't envision myself ever watching this again, except maybe for like little snippets if I'm ever watching tape on either of these guys.
Kristen, you are the Florida resident. This rivalry, a lot of it started like almost in your backyard. Like, did that heighten it? This so-called beef, did it heighten your anticipation of this at all?
Not necessarily. I think it would have if the stars had aligned and this would have taken place in the 305, like at the American Airlines Arena on March 5th of all days. Like, then it would have felt really, really big, or you could have got a simplistic arena like a Publix parking lot, and that would have had a lot of significance. That's where you do your business in Florida. You go out there to Publix, the parking lot, do your business, and then once you're finished, you get in there and you get yourself a chicken tender sub, and you can talk it all out. That it would have been more significant had it played out there. But it didn't do that. I will admit, like I was telling you guys off of the camera, I had a lot of family members. They're from Florida, obviously, And they were hyped. They're like, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be like some super big grudge match. It's like 2 Miami kids fighting each other and all that stuff. And I'm letting them know. I'm like, listen, beyond some kind of like brutal right hand from Masvidal, this is going to be a rough night for him, knowing the kind of style that Covington possesses. It's very much his kryptonite. And they're like, no. They're talking about funerals and baptisms and stuff like that. It's going to be crazy. I'm like, all right. And we're watching. Nothing. It didn't do anything. I had a couple people leave before the end of the fight because they saw the way it was playing out. I tried to let them know that this is how it was going to go. And they didn't want to believe me. They were so caught up in the hype, and they truly believed that whoever emerged victorious would be the king of Miami, but none of them stuck around to find out who that was. So
yes,
it is.
It's definitely Rick Ross, but I mean,
and I want to throw a question at you actually, based on this, because I know what you learned about this fight. Did it live up to the hype to you? In any way, in any metric?
It lived up to the hype as far as like knowing that I still can predict some good stuff on fights. Like when I knock it out the park, I knock it out the park, despite some really horrible misses lately. So it restored some of my confidence in my fight and analyst abilities. But other than, I mean, this was not a fight that I was necessarily anticipating much anyway, because when they first announced it, it was like, okay, you know, George is going to get smothered. Like Masvidal is just going to get covered like a blanket through most of it. He's going to take some pity pat punches, and Masvidal is probably going to have one nice little moment. And it was cool to watch it play out exactly the way we said. But no, and then considering the low stakes as far as the title picture is concerned, it was hard to really care. And then to think like this is a, you know, $75 price tag attached to this. Nah, fam. Like it just wasn't worth that. But the funniest part about the whole thing to me had to have been like, you know, the pre-fight stuff. The press conference was an absolute disaster. It's like one of the worst press conferences that I can remember, at least since like Conor Khabib in Brooklyn. I mean, it was just genuinely awful and juvenile. But all the dummies that were there cheering for everything Colby said, and they're just going crazy because he's got an American flag on his shoulders. They're losing their damn minds. And when the fight happens, like all you dummies that were out there cheering for Colby the entire time, when Colby fights like Colby, you start booing him. It blew my mind. Like, what have you been cheering about this whole time? Like, this is the guy. This is exactly what he was going to do. I don't know, man. These people are stupid.
What you mentioned, and I guess I'm going to take the reins right for a second for no reason. You mentioned how this is low stakes because it's wildly low stakes. They're combined 0 for 4 against Kamaru Usman. And say what you want about Colby Covington having close fights with Usman, he got knocked out in one of them, and he, you know, almost got knocked out in the other, and he, you know, he took it to a decision, and it was a, you know, a relatively close scorecard. But I don't care because he's 0 for 2 against the champion. Like the third, you can't sell a third fight. This fight, I don't know, I mean, maybe we'll find out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Masvidal has some shine left, but I don't think this was a mega seller. But what the heck does the UFC do? Like with these guys, they're in a pickle. Colby Covington called out Dustin Poirier. Yeah, when we're calling out guys a division below us, that's your best chance, and a guy who has never fought in 170 before. I think he knows what's going on. I don't know. Kristen, what do you think? I'm gonna throw it to you first, I suppose.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, the position that both of them find themselves in, because obviously they want, for Masvidal wanted another shot at Usman, but I don't know how he could get that. It's almost slightly the same with Colby, but I feel like there's a greater path for Colby to get back to Usman. It just depends on who he beats.
Yeah. And
calling out Dustin Poirier makes absolute no sense. I understand that your whole shtick right now is just getting all of the people who have been talking crap about you and former teammates, and they're talking reckless in the media. I got it. I completely get it. And somehow, somewhere, like in the depths of me, I feel like Colby Covington versus ATT is a compelling storyline, but I don't care enough to see it play out any further than where it's already gone. So if I'm Colby Covington and I want a shot at Kamaru Usman again because you ultimately believe you have what it takes to beat him, then you need to start fighting these guys in the top 10 of the division and just drop the act. Prove that you're serious enough that you do want another shot at the champion, and just stop hoping that your shtick gets that to you. Call out somebody that you know could be a well-worthy opponent. Call out the Vicente Luques. Call out the Khamzat Chimaevs, the Gilbert Burns. Call those guys out, because at the end of the day, if you're going to go for Usman again, you're going to have to go through some of these guys. It's not I gave Usman his toughest test, and therefore I should still be number one no matter what happens. No, the division is going to continue to move along, and whether you're there is up to you. So you need to be calling out these top 10, top 5 maybe, because Colby does have the ability to beat these guys. It's just you're not targeting them, and I question that. Is your shtick more important than what you're doing as far as your fighting legacy? Is that what you want to be remembered by? Just the abrasiveness and the brashness that you bring to the table, and those quips that you can sometimes get through, sometimes you can't get through, because sometimes Colby really butchers a call out or a rehearsed line, if you will. Is that all you want to be remembered for? I'm sure it has worked for you, but at the end of the day, if you're going to make claim to, I'm still like, if Kamaru's 1A and I'm 1B, show why. Call out those guys at the top and see what you can do against them. And for someone like George, I feel like this might be it for him as far as top ranked contenders. Maybe he could still get there within the top 15. But I did see something on Reddit, and I kind of wanted to pose this to you guys. Someone said it just on Saturday night, it didn't look like he was having fun anymore. It looked like he was kind of done. And I wanted to pose that to you guys because I don't necessarily get that feeling from George. I get that feeling only when he's up against someone that can neutralize everything he brings to the octagon. So if you can't get your hands on that person and you can't knock him out and you're just completely smothered, of course you're not going to look like you're having fun. But with the little bit of gas that he has left in the tank, I would love to see him go up against a striker. He'd have a hell of a lot of fun against a striker and get back to that breakout 2019 run that he had. He looked great in all of those fights. You know what I mean? So I'm switching the conversation and asking you guys, do you think that this is all that Jorge has left? Is this the end of the baddest motherfucker run?
That BMF run ended when Usman handled him, but I'm inclined to think that Masvidal certainly has reached his competitive peak, but this contract that he signed, it's pushing him into a territory where he probably should be now. If you're that big of a draw and it's proven that you are not going to get this belt, the two best guys in the division, you've lost to them, and all bets are off as far as title hopes are concerned. Well, take fun fights. Have the, reignite that feud you tried to start with Conor McGregor. See where that gets you. If any bozos out there still want to see him rematch Nate Diaz, which I don't understand why, but apparently there are people who think that should happen, then make that your target. Like, Jorge Masvidal has guaranteed that the UFC does not place him anywhere on a card other than a main or co-main. That's it. So you got to have the fun fights to justify that paycheck and to bring let the UFC keep booking you, because otherwise, I guarantee you what's going to happen if he doesn't win some fun fights, or if they don't try to just use him for fun fights. He is going to get one more. I'd say if Leon Edwards comes out on the losing end against Usman, they'll put the Leon Edwards fight together and they'll try to sell that on the grudge match. And then he's going to be, if he doesn't win that one, or even if he does win that, he's probably going to be used to boost up Chimaev. That's probably what's next. And then he's headed to Scott Coker land. Because when you make that much money and you're not top flight competition anymore, if you aren't bringing in the carnival, then you are going to get cut. So Jorge Masvidal might be on short legs with the UFC if he doesn't turn things around.
I'd rather see Masvidal versus MVP than anything they're going to give him in the UFC for his next fight.
Ooh, I'm not feeling that. I'm not, because I still see the fun fights. I see them. I look at the rankings, And then I don't want to totally leave my, exclusive look at the rankings. I mean, he's lost 3 in a row. Granted, there's the 1 and 2 in the division. I got a couple names for you. Work with me here. Jorge Masvidal used to be a 155er. I don't know if he's willing to go back or willing to entertain the notion of somebody coming up to meet him. But there's a couple names that are happy at 170 or could stand to move to 155 or one could stand to move up to 170. Obviously, the first one, former teammates, no longer teammates. They swam in the same circles. They fought in the same cards. Robbie Lawler. I think that could be a whole lot of fun. I don't care about the Diaz fights. There was something, Ben, you said on your recap show. I have or somebody brought up in the recap show. I don't want to blame you for it. I do not have any interest in seeing Nick Diaz fight again, especially against Jorge Masvidal. I think that would be a murder. Other fights. The other 2 that came to mind, they're both lightweights. Tony Ferguson needs a fun fight, needs a fun opponent. They don't train together, I don't think, ever. And they both have styles that could make wackadoo fights. And of course, what is the biggest money fight they could put together right now? If it's not Diaz McGregor, why not
Masvidal?
McGregor. Do it. Get it done. Keep him out of the title picture. Keep him out of everything and make a lot of money. Ben, am I stupid?
You're not stupid, but you are wrong.
Okay.
So are you, Kristen, so don't smile. I'm actually on board with the Poirier fight because for Covington because
okay.
I disagree a little bit with Kristen's assessment. I think Covington on some level knows he can't beat Usman, and it hasn't been fun to try. I think Covington probably does want to keep talking and keep filling his schedule with blockbuster grudge matches for the foreseeable future. I think he probably is looking towards marketability at this point because he tried keeping his mouth shut and going up the ladder the normal way, and he just about got cut from the UFC, despite the fact that he could have wrestled at least half of the roster into oblivion. Yeah, I think he's on for the spectacle things now. Like calling out someone who's not even in his weight class and is a weight class below, it makes a little bit of sense in the case of Poirier because one, Poirier is a big lightweight who has talked openly about how hard the weight cut is. Like he's not the 22-year-old kid that used to cut to 145 in WEC anymore. And Covington is an undersized welterweight. Like I believe that in shape but out of camp, Dustin Poirier walks around heavier than Colby Covington does. Poirier is in a similar situation in his own division. There are things that need to sort themselves out ahead of him in the title picture, even though he's a top 5 guy. And if Charles Oliveira defends his title in May, Poirier has almost as long a route around to another title shot as Covington does. This is a fight that it sells itself because they're going to talk mad shit on each other and kind of keeps both guys from knocking off other potential title contenders in their respective divisions. Let them do it. Let's see how much each of these guys has picked up in terms of shine from fighting Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, respectively.
Yeah, Ben, I think you're spot on with the Covington Poirier fight because it's a good way to keep the title picture from getting sillier while keeping people active and putting on a tentpole event possibly. So I think as far if Colby Covington wants to take the legitimate route as far as keeping himself busy until he can work his way back to a title shot, Wonder Boy is the guy that he should be fighting because
Covington,
yeah. Wonder Boy is the guy that Covington should be trying to fight if the path to back to the belt is going to be done legitimately. He's a top 10 opponent. It's a fresh matchup. It's a very, very winnable fight for him. I have a hard time not seeing the fight go exactly the way we think it's going to go.
After Bilal Muhammad out-wrestled Thompson as bad as he did, yeah.
And then on top of that, it plays perfectly into the persona that he has built up on the mic. Wonder Boy is noted to be like the nicest person in the sport of mixed martial arts, and he can just troll him and Wonder Boy has expressed his dislike for Covington and his antics several times in the past. So this is another fight that can sell itself. So I think Covington, if he wants to go the legitimate route, Wonder Boy's the guy. And if that fight has any trouble getting made, or he wants to go another direction, I mean, goading Poirier into a fight sounds like a good idea too. And quite honestly, I don't see anyone at 170 not named Kamaru Usman beating him at this point.
Why? Anytime someone wants to antagonize Poirier, why do they always go straight for Jolie?
I don't.
She just seems like a lovely person.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be really ironic if it turned out that she actually was in all these people's DMs, but I find that highly unlikely.
Yeah. Doubt it. I think Connor kind of opened the door for that, and they're like, all right, that's an easy target. I'm gonna go same route.
Yeah.
You know? It's lazy, but it works.
Like Covington's trash talk has gotten so garbage. Like it was already bad, but it's gotten so much worse. Like if you're on stage talking about how does a bill become a law, like this is your trash talk. This is what you got.
He should have called me. I got you, fam.
Full Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
Up on this podium.
I'm not ready for Dustin Poirier to have fun fights yet. I'm not ready for that. I don't think he's out of the picture far enough, because y'all are sleeping on Justin Gaethje. If Justin Gaethje beats Carlos Oliveira, that would be one of the very, very actual few reasonable explanations to have a guy coming off a loss fight for a title, because he knocked out Justin Gaethje. I think that one sells itself. And Covington, Gilbert Burns beats Khamzat Chimaev like I expect he will. Gilbert Burns isn't ready for a title shot either, because he got knocked out by Usman. Covington Burns. Or say Chimaev does the thing that for some reason he's a betting favorite about. Oh my God, that's so stupid. Chimaev needs another top 5 guy. Put him against Covington, and they can talk about smashing all night or whatever the hell they do. I'm not ready to sell them down the fun fight land. I want Masvidal to fun fight.
All right. You guys are coming up with some good stuff here, so I'm liking it. But let's keep things pushing here, because we do have another notable guy, formerly welterweight, but we most know him as the former lightweight champion, RDA, Rafael dos Anjos. He put a beating on Renato Moicano, who was jumping in to replace Rafael Fiziev on 5 days notice or something like that. Mm-hmm. So much to say about this fight, but first let's talk about RDA. Does this improve his stock? Where are we placing him now?
I mean, it looked like a vintage RDA performance. He did all the things that at his best at 155 pounds he did, where he was just a relentless wrestler, a crushingly heavy top position grappler with nasty ground and pound, and surprisingly adept on the feet. You know, he's not some one-dimensional guy who had to turn to wrestling because he was getting pieced up. Like, you know, he was destroying people like Donald Cerrone on the feet. He looked all the way back to that. And just the question is, how much of it is because he was taking on someone in Moicano that would have been a rough style matchup for him anyway, and was stepping up on super short notice and may not have been in the best shape. But to me, he's still established himself as somebody who, being a former champ, may only be another 2 wins away from a shot at the title again. It would be nice if he fought somebody on a full camp, because now he's 2-0 since dropping back down from welterweight against short notice opponents both times. But he's right there in the picture.
Yeah. Kristen, where do you see RDA in the title picture with this win?
Yeah, it is close for him, but I just feel like this one against Moicano kind of reaffirmed what we already knew about RDA. I mean, I knew it'd be a fun matchup between him and Moicano, and props to Moicano for even stepping in on short notice, because this was not the fight that a lot of people expected to happen on short notice. I know a lot of people were very excited at the idea of Islam Makhachev finally stepping in and getting that fight with RDA. And I think that Makhachev and Fiziev are the perfect litmus test to see where RDA can be in the lightweight division since his return. He hasn't been as active recently. I believe the last time he fought was like 2020. I think that was when Felder.
Yep.
Yeah, Felder stepped in on short notice and stuff like that, and he's been out, and for a variety of reasons like COVID and injuries and stuff like that, and just things beyond his control. So this kind of reaffirmed that he can still hang up there with a lot of these top guys. And now I'm interested in seeing how he could hold his own, I guess, with the new crop of the class, you know, against those Makhachevs, against those Fizievs. So if he wants to continue to prove that he is able to be up there amongst the elite, which he is there pretty much, but if he wants to go even further, he'd have to take on those guys that are being talked about as the next up and coming thing. I mean, Makhachev and Fiziev are two names that people are sure, like by 2023, one of those guys could be a champion. So I think that we already saw RDA in what we know from him. So just continue to push yourself and continue to take out these young guys, and you're right there.
This to me was the all must have forgot fight for Dos Anjos. 100%. Like I coming to this fight, I'm going to toot my own horn and say I think I almost picked. Did I pick 50-44 on this fight? I know we talked about.
I think when we recorded this fight hadn't been put together yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it was still.
That's right. It was Holland.
Yeah, we were speculating on Makhachev taking over.
Yep. Okay. Then I must have said to somebody. But anyway, this to me played out exactly how I thought it would. That Moicano would try and have his best shot was first round, and once Dos Anjos took it to him, put the screws to him, there was nothing there for him left. The only thing that I learned is that Renato Moicano's corner hates him by sending him out for those next rounds, as the dude is, you know, one eye and he's concussed and he's bleeding all over and there's nothing left in the tank. And then Moicano gets out there and actually stuns Dos Anjos and surprises him and gets a pity score round because, relatively speaking, he did better than the washings in the previous several rounds. This to me reminded me and everybody else exactly how good Dos Anjos still is. It makes me go, okay, he would have beaten Fiziev if they had fought. I think, Ben, you and Keith were talking about that in your show. I think he would have beaten that. Dos Anjos would have beaten Javier Fiziev had they fought instead on Saturday. I want to see him fight. Sure, the Fiziev fight's fine, but for some reason I'm over it. I don't know why. I want to see him fight Michael Chandler. That just sounds. Just top five, number 5, number 6. Longtime former Bellator champion, former UFC champion. Styles can come together. They both have heavy hands when they want to. I feel like that would be fun, and it would kind of sort out the picture because Chandler still needs a good top flight win again. That's my thought on that one.
If they were champions at the same time, right? Like Chandler was Bellator champion at the same time that RDA was.
Chandler had 3 different reigns, so I think they probably bumped into
one of his reigns was in there with RDA. Yeah, so
it's very possible they had there was a time when on the Sherlock forums people were like, who would win in the UFC or in the crossover championship fight? Probably.
Yeah, I mean that's a fight that just sounds wonderful. Like I'm over the Rafael Civil War if we get to see Chandler in there. That sounds fantastic. But Ben, I want to throw it to you. Who is the most responsible for the travesty of Renato Moicano making it to decision in this fight? You put it on the ref, the corner, the doctor, or all parties involved? The corner.
It's on the corner. The doctors. I think the doctor's scope there it's kind of limited. If he asks, "Can you see?" and you say, "Yeah," you send him back out. It is not for the ref to throw in the towel. Like, the ref is supposed to stop the fight if the fighter is unconscious, obviously maimed, or just like literally not defending himself. To just stop a fight between rounds is not within the referee's purview. And it's unfair to expect a fighter concussed, full of endorphins, hyper competitive to start with, to be the one to stop this. It is 100% on the corner here. It's one spot where boxing really is smarter than MMA, because even at the highest levels, boxing corners are not too manly to throw in the towel and just say, you know what? It's not our night. Let's go home, lick our wounds, go back to the drawing board. If it's meant to be, we'll see this guy next year. Like, even at the highest levels of boxing, it's not unmanly to do that. And in MMA, it just doesn't happen enough. And it's to the detriment of the fighters.
Absolutely. It feels like we have this conversation on a regular basis, and I'm quite sick of it. Kristen J, any thoughts that you wanted to get out about the corner non-stoppage that occurred on Saturday?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's frustrating to say this, but sometimes I think the corner takes into consideration a turning of the tide, whether that seems like a possibility at that moment. And in that 5th round, it certainly seemed like there was a turn of the tide. Moicano just went for broke, and he was going there and he was tagging RDA. And I mean, for 4 minutes of a slight, or 5 minutes of a slight, hey, he could really do this. I don't know if you want to take that risk necessarily. I guess when you're looking at it from a, well, he could still win this fight. He could still get double his paycheck and walk away with a win over an absolute legend and someone like RDA. I guess that's the way that they're thinking. But sometimes it's just not your night. And the whole hot potato shifting the onus of the corner to Mark Goddard, to the doctor. Because I think at one point we even heard Mark Goddard say to the doctor, his corner is not going to stop the fight.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
He already knew. And he's like, so what do you want me to do? And then the doctor was kind of a little bit washy as well when he's like, well, it is reasonable to stop it. And I'm like, so what does that mean? Does that mean that Mark's going to stop it? And then he gave that little 30-second thing like, hey, if you don't show me something in 30 seconds, I'm going to stop the fight. And of course, Moicano did not do that. So it was very odd. I'm as much as you guys like to say that I'm a bloodthirsty fiend, I am not. And I was a little bit uncomfortable watching the prolonged drubbing that was RDA versus Moicano, and I fully thought that it was well enough warranted to be stopped. But sometimes the corner just gets ahead of itself and says, I think my fighter could still win this if he does something big. But when you're already down 4 rounds and in the 5th round you have a really good one, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
You gotta love the fools that go on to justify this man getting his head bludgeoned in unnecessarily for 25 minutes or 24 minutes because he had 1 minute where he did something semi good. So
he has effect. If he 1 more minute,
if this were a street fight, bro. Like,
I'm really happy, Duffy. You mentioned the Goddard oddity and the doctor and that whole. Referees don't have the authority to stop the fight mid rounds unless they're instructed to do so. They can't wave off a fight when there's not a fight fighting. That's not part of the unified rules. It's on advice of the doctor or on advice of the corner or on, well, not advice, but on the statement of the fighter. Those are, I believe, unless I'm mistaken about, there's no such thing as a TKO referee stoppage. That's right, Russian fight finder people. There's no such thing as TKO referee stoppage. You got to realize somebody has to tell the referee to stop the fight. You got to realize that. Anyway, if Deontay Wilder's corner can stop the fight for him, and it doesn't make him look like a wimp against Tyson Fury, I think Moicano. This is ATT. They should know better. I don't know if it's Mike Brown in corner. There were tons of ATT. It was Parmpino. It's Parmpino. He knows better. Yep. He knows his guy isn't getting back out there. It's just live to fight another day, guys. There will be more. Losses don't matter as much as they do in boxing. I mean, look at Ryzen. God, they just headlined a card with an 0-1 guy. And they go, yeah, he's a kickboxer. Yeah, he's like 11-4 in kickboxing. Let's not freak out here. Losses don't mean as much of a big deal as they used to. So let's save his brain health a little bit, guys. We don't have to do the Glover Teixeira, I'm sorry, Anthony thing. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only way the losses really, really, really matter now is that show win system. So I definitely think that comes into effect with the corners. They have to be thinking about the paychecks that are coming in as well. So,
but are they
it's a flawed system?
Are they thinking? Okay, this is a really tough question. Are they thinking of the fighter and their paycheck, or are they thinking of the other half of the paycheck that they will then be entitled to as a percentage?
Probably both. I mean, either way, they shouldn't be thinking about either.
Correct. Thank you. That is the correct answer. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. That shouldn't be a consideration because the show win system should not exist. Exactly. If that system is there, inherently people are going to look out for their own self-interest in that way. So, yeah. But anyway, let's keep things pushing here. We've got quick hits. We're going to put 30 seconds on the clock and ask the panelists several questions. So, because Kristen is our guest, I'll lead off with asking her a question. Was the UFC rooting for Nah, I don't want to ask you that question. I'm going to ask you a fun one. We're going to strike that one. They didn't give that fight enough respect, but that's another story. Khabib was announced as the 2022 UFC Hall of Fame. I think the modern wing is the designation he's put on there.
Yep.
How do you feel about his induction?
I feel weirdly good about it because I feel like this is the final nail in the coffin that needed to be any talk of Khabib possibly coming back for that one fight against a special fighter like George St. Pierre, like Dana White was trying so hard to kind of put together. So I feel like this is a finality. Like, Khabib is not coming back. He's not unretiring. He's made it very clear that he's no longer interested in fighting if it's not with his father in his corner. So being inducted into the modern wing, it feels like, all right, this guy's retired. Let's leave him there.
All right, good. All right.
I really want to disrespect the clock to chime in on this topic if I can.
Of course.
I feel like the UFC should have waited. Period. The end. They should have waited. This is Khabib Nurmagomedov, a guy who just retired, a Russian fighter who is pals with Ramzan Kadyrov, who gets paid, gets cars, gets all kinds of stuff with a current Russian dictator, Chechen dictator, warlord that is actively trying to invade Ukraine. What was the hurry to put Khabib on the pedestal, given the fact that Russia we're not happy about Russia right now? I mean, Marina Moroz, by the way, is how her name is, didn't get shine, shouldn't get the shine that she deserved from the UFC. I'm not opposed to it by his credentials and by his laurels, by his achievements, but Khabib, and that whole camp, it's not. He's not one of those fighters that can go up and say, I'm against the war and I'm against anybody who supports it, because he's not. So when you dig past the fact that he's a fighter and go with the fact that he's a proud Russian Dagestan native that is personal friends with a person that's trying to advance war causes, let's pump the brakes on Khabib. Maybe I'm picking at scabs that shouldn't be picked at, but I felt there's a time and a place. And 2 weeks into the invasion of a country, inducting the big Russian guy who is like, he's not friends with, but he is first name basis with Vladimir Putin. Let's slow down on Khabib.
You know what, Jay, you're not picking at scabs that shouldn't be picked at, but you're just picking at scabs that the UFC prefers to just fall off on their own.
That's fair.
This is like, I mean, I keep coming back to this because I think it says everything about the organization. This is the same organization that, while the rest of the world was shut down and people were dying and no one had any idea what's going on and everyone's in quarantine, they insisted on keeping the show going, consequences be damned, and literally created Fight Island to do it. So the UFC continually tries to exist in a place where politics don't matter, right? No matter how severe they are, or the world doesn't exist, just our octagon, and this is another byproduct of that. So you're right, but the UFC it's going to pretend like it's not going on, other than silly little word salad.
That's true. But Joe Rogan handed Marina Moroz the microphone. I cannot remember the last time someone's taken the microphone from Joe Rogan where he didn't have a hand on it. I can't remember that. Yeah.
Well, Joe Rogan was on the call. Fair. I mean, Joe Rogan was on the call just a couple weeks after the controversy.
Oh no, I'm not touching that part.
I'm saying, but that's the
excellent
level,
point too.
Yeah, that's the level of the bubble that they try to keep around.
A great point too.
Current events in the world to UFC action.
Going there? That's great, man. It's just Anyway, I'm sorry I did rail.
Oh no, you're all right. Jay, so since you're in such a talkative mood,
I am, I guess.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw 30 seconds in your direction here, sir. Bryce Mitchell passed the Edson Barboza test. So when he's thrown to the wolves, which wolf is the best matchup for him, and what would be the worst?
Ooh, man, he absolutely shined in a way that even those of us that thought he would win went, dang. That was a very impressive performance against Edson Barboza, who can flatline guys with one knee. His best I think the best guy he could fight would be Giga Chikadze, because he could do that exact same thing to Giga Chikadze. And the worst matchup, I mean, other than like the top guys, Brian Ortega would be a nightmare for him, because that would be the kind of thing that Ortega would snatch up something and it'd be awful.
So good point. I would have gone with Josh Emmett being the worst.
I thought about that for a sprawling brawler, but I thought, yeah, Emmett can. Yeah. I'm not mad at that.
Hey, you're right on the path.
I'm not mad at it.
All right, Ben. So I got 30 seconds for you. Kevin Holland wrecked Cowboy Oliveira, so he is now firmly in the pile of action welterweights. Or do you think he breaks away from that pack quickly?
I think he has the potential to break away from that pack. What he ran into at 185 was a pair of back-to-back fighters who were just bigger and stronger than him and willing to leverage wrestling on him. Certainly welterweight has guys like that, but not until you get up into the top 10. Then it's packed with wrestlers. I think he's probably going to win his next 2 or 3 fights and at least get into the top 10 and give the UFC hope that he gets into the title picture before he, runs into a Covington type.
All right. Very good answer there. Very good answer.
You respected the clock very well, sir.
I mean, he continually respects the clock. I mean, it's the balance that you don't have. So
it's true. Back in the very beginning, Duffy always seems to disrespect. So he learned well. I am failing.
I was drunk for the first year and a half of this show because my sleep schedule is flipped. But now I've had my coffee. I've got that musician brain where like the clock in my head is pretty accurate. And
you like measuring bars as your.
Yeah, I'm respecting.
I'm impressed, man.
I was drunk for the first half of the run of this show as well, so that was great.
Not right now?
Not yet. Not yet.
And I guess it's your turn, right?
Yes, it is. So in the interest of me not looking like a crazy person, please ask me a question so I don't ask it myself.
I would be happy to. All right. The question is one that I know you were very, very excited to talk about. Greg Hardy, 3 losses in a row. Can you imagine, and this is the end of his contract, can you imagine the UFC re-signing him on the heels of 3 knockout losses in a row?
Unfortunately, I can imagine them re-signing him, but I don't think they'll do it. I mean, this is a world where Sam Alvey can lose like 12 in a row, and he's still on the roster. And they've tried to force Greg Hardy on us for so long that I wouldn't be surprised if they continually try to force him on us. I'm convinced that he has some dirt on Ari Emanuel, and that's why he's still like so prominent on every card that he fights on. But honestly, this guy's going to BKFC. That's going to be the next move. He's too much of he's not a superhero like one wants. I think Bellator doesn't have much use for him, and BKFC sounds about right.
Just to let you know that the 5th deleted scene question was about Sam Alvey.
All right, so now let's keep things going here because it's time for the best titled segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically didn't since we last met. Kristen, I'm going to start with you. What is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
My moment was the complete 180 that Dana White did on a potential fight between Conor McGregor and Jorge Masvidal. There was a time where that did not seem like a feasible option. No, Jorge's too big. He might have an issue with a smaller Conor as it was being painted. Then we get to the post-fight press conference of UFC 272. And you know what? Yeah, actually, I like that fight. And I'm like, you know what? I like it too. And I think it should have been an option anyway. But the way that I look at it, you have 2 big names with somewhat of a waning star power at this point. They're on 2-3 fight losing streaks. I think for Jorge it's 3, Conor it's 2 with the back-to-back Dustin Poirier thing. So of course you kind of want to milk that cash cow and you get 2 of the biggest names that you have in the promotion right now and put them up against each other. And I mean, it shouldn't have been so just ignored in the beginning, because I think this was around the time that Jorge was going on his little run, and it seemed like a really bad idea at the time to put him up against someone like Conor, especially in his return. But now, that's a great fight. I love that. So I was very surprised by that, because this is coming from someone who was legitimately worried about Conor's chances against Jorge at one point. Now that doesn't seem to be there. That worry has completely gone away. So I was very surprised by that.
Nice one. Nice observation there. Ben, what's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I mean, we really already talked about it quite a bit, so I'm not going to belabor it. But I just was surprised unironically surprised and just kind of reminded of how good Rafael dos Anjos is. So, I will have to keep that in mind ahead of his next fight. Rumors of his professional demise have been greatly exaggerated.
To extend your segment just a second, who would you like to see him face next? Is it Fiziev?
Yeah, just remake the Fiziev fight. I thought it was appropriate before. I still think it is.
Oh, no Chandler fight?
I was softballing it.
I mean, that's just it. Oh, the Chandler fight. Oh, that sounds so good. All right, Jay. Because you are a man with an exceptional storytelling ability, I'm going to put a clock on you. So you've got 1 minute to share here. Where's my clock? There it is. To share your I'm not surprised moment this week, sir, and your clock begins now.
So we're leaving MMA and going to boxing because boxing is crazy. So in January, a Brazilian boxer named Acelino Freitas, Popo for short, he's like 41-2 as a pro, fought most of his time at like super featherweight, so like 130, 135. Had won against a YouTuber, as you can tell, this is crossing over to international stands, and got like 90 million viewers in Brazil or something crazy. A ludicrous amount of people watched this fight. So Popos, after the fight, they fought to a draw. He said, I want to fight other people. Hey, Jose Aldo. And Jose Aldo's like, I'm in the UFC. So he called out Vanderlei Silva and Vitor Belfort. Vitor's like, yeah, I know this guy. I love this guy. I watched this guy for years. I'll fight him. Vitor Belfort, 185 pounds. Popo Freitas, I don't know, 130 pounds. This guy called out Vitor. He says he's going to be 165 for the fight, but he's going to box Vitor Belfort in Triller. He's 46. I don't know. This is awful. This is awful. Stop it. Throw the damn towel.
That's absolutely terrible. I'm so glad that was the one time that we put a clock on your I'm not surprised. Let's drop that as soon as possible. All right. My I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment comes from, I don't even know who these people are. I just saw this on Twitter. It was a fight announcement poster advertising the Freedom Fight Night event, and it just had Tito Ortiz and Rampage squared off on it. So when I thought like Tito and Rampage, like, okay, yeah, that probably could happen in Bellator or something. But then something just seemed wrong about it. And then when it was saying, it said Freedom Keys Society's first event, and it just had this look of, okay, is this a fight poster or is this some sort of announcement of some sort of event where these guys are going to be speakers? And I thought like, wow, if these are your keynote speakers, you are in for a tough time. This is terrible. Like, goddamn, like what a horrible presence to put on the mic for the conservative causes. And then I was also surprised because this was saying conservative voices being ignored in MMA. Like, did we not just have like the MAGA Civil War just in the pay-per-view like Saturday? Do we not have a continual rollout of conservative causes and politicians and fighters speaking up about all sorts of stuff all the time?
Bryce Mitchell had the biggest star-making turn at this past event, and he is as wackadoodle as they get.
Yeah, and the thing is, he doesn't stand out that much from the rest of the roster. He really doesn't. Like, I'm completely surprised by the idea that someone can, without any sense of irony, say that MMA has ignored conservative voices. I'm also not surprised that conservative voices are saying dumb shit. So that is my segment for the week. I do kind of hope for the clips of comedy that we'll see posted to Twitter. I want to see Tito and Rampage talking about politics on stage. I got to see it. I want that more than I want to fight, and I didn't want the fight anyway, but I really want them on stage talking politics, please.
I want a fight circus where they debate and then fight afterwards. That's what I want. Or no. They fight and then they debate.
Yeah, and then we find out how a bill is made and turned into a law.
Oh, full circle. Look at this.
Come on. Call us. We got it.
Actually, when you look at the guest list for the guest list for the Freedom Fight Night, like this is a who's who of dummies. So Trump, Ron DeSantis, total trash. I know, Kristen, you're familiar with his level of garbage. Ted Cruz, Ben, you're familiar with his level of garbage. Trump Jr. This is absolute lunacy. conservative voices being ignored in MMA. I can't wait to see the comments on this one. If one of these conservative voices listens to this show, oh man, see, Black Power fist. Anyway, so let's keep things pushing.
It is $100 a ticket.
Oh, to be there, or
yes.
It's not for the pay-per-view, right? Because I see
150 cage side, and you can sponsor a table for $100,000.
$100 cage side. That's actually a really good deal.
Yeah,
I mean, really good deal.
That's cheap for a fight or for like a political fundraiser.
Yeah,
dinner.
Well, okay. I don't know. I mean, for $100, maybe I would see Tito and Rampage up close in a horrible fight. Oh man, and I would show up with this hoodie on. Consequences be damned. So, all right. So we do have some actual like legitimate fights to discuss very briefly here. UFC is in action, but we've got Invicta, we've got Eagle FC with Diego Sanchez and Kevin Lee in the main event. We've got Bellator 276. What non-UFC fight is sticking out to you the most?
I mean, Phil Davis versus Julius Iglesias is pretty cool. The Kevin Lee versus Diego Sanchez thing just looks to me like the beginning of the end for Eagle FC as a serious promotion. Like, I'm sorry, you don't make that matchup atop one of your cards if you're looking at long-term viability. That's not it.
No, good point there.
I'm very happy you said that because I agree completely. I was very much looking forward to the Invicta title fight until it changed the other day, so I'm not looking forward to it. That was a rematch of a fight that I covered, but I don't know. Boy, oh boy, you gotta kind of scroll through this card to go, what looks good on any of these things. You know, Eagle is really trying to pluck the former UFC cast outs like Imba Kasanganai. Ray Borg, Ricky Bandejas probably makes me wonder, and it's not just because their initials are both RB, but because of the stylistic matchup. I want to see if Ray Borg can really. Okay, here's what I want to see most. Ray Borg wins the fight and then says he's going to move back to flyweight. That's what I want to see, because that is a running theme that he keeps doing, and he keeps looking at bantamweight and going, he's huge at bantamweight. By the way, this guy is probably $155 on fight night, and he keeps on talking about wanting to move back to flyweight. So yeah, I want to see how big he is, and I want to see when he says he wants to move back to flyweight.
Yeah. Kristen, anything non-UFC standing out to you this coming week?
Yeah, I'll probably take the Bellator card. I like the Derek Anderson and Goiti Yamauchi fight. That should be interesting. And I think Derek Anderson hasn't fought since he got his nose absolutely caved in by that kick from Michael Venom Page. I'm always interested in seeing someone come back from a catastrophic injury. If you guys haven't seen that, please take a look. That one was a really bad one. And then as far as fights is concerned, I don't see too many standouts, but I am looking at certain fighters. JJ Wilson is one. Super phenomenal talent. Just couldn't get his weight cut down. I think he was very good at featherweight, but that scale was beating his ass. So now it's a lightweight fight. I'm excited to see that. I'm also excited to see Roman Feraldo back because he did that insane knockout. I think, was that at the end of the year or the beginning of this year? It was like a knockout of the year contender. So I'm always curious to see how you can follow up a performance like that with something else, maybe something else flashy, another knockout. So those are my standouts.
If Feraldo calls a shot again like he did against Turnquest, I think that was at the end of last year, and points and says he's going to get him, and that's good.
Make that a thing.
Yeah.
That's your thing.
Yeah, that's it.
And knock a dude out.
That is a great thing to have.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to highlight the Ray Borg and Ricky Bandejas fight from Eagle FC. That's one that I'm kind of intrigued by that one. Ricky Bandejas is actually one of the more fun media day interviews that I've had. Like, he's actually a pretty interesting guy to talk to. Also, I'm intrigued by Khabib Nurmagomedov employing the people that have targeted him or have been in the cage with him, because not only is Kevin Lee, who had been targeting Khabib for his entire UFC run, but Daryl Horcher, former opponent of Nurmagomedov, a short notice opponent, is fighting on this card against get this pronunciation right because you know how good I am with that, Ahmed Aliyev. So I'm kind of intrigued by just Khabib turning former foes into employees or independent contractors. Let me say that correctly. So this Eagle FC actually, you know, I agree with you, Ben. I think this as a main event isn't good for longevity. But they are putting some intriguing matchups together, and kind of curious where it goes, and we'll see how long this can go on. So I'm with it.
It's kind of like straight out of the Triller Triad Combat book. You get some guys that you are familiar with, put them at the top of the card so you can garner some interest, and then hope that those people that came over to watch your card stick around for the next couple of shows. And that's all dependent on who you put at the top of the card. But anytime you get to make yourself familiar with new names in the game, that's a great opportunity. So I look forward to the card.
Right. So but I think we would definitely do the audience a misservice here if we didn't talk about UFC Fight Night. Which Fight Night number is this? Like 3012 or something? UFC Vegas 7900 or whatever.
Actually, is this Vegas 50 or is this 51?
It's 50.
I thought it was 50. I thought it was 50.
Okay. We got Thiago Santos and Magomed Ankalaev in the main event. A pretty intriguing main event as far as the styles go. But the rest of this card is actually pretty dope.
Legit.
Like this is some interesting stuff on here. So I'm gonna give each person one fight that you want to highlight here aside from the main event. Kristen, as our guest, you go first.
Sure. I'm probably going to take the easiest one, and I think a lot of people are thinking of this, but that Alex Pereira and Bruno Silva fight, that should have been on a freaking pay-per-view. That could have been – it's the opener for the main card.
100%.
Yeah, this one could have been an opener on like 272 or something, because when you talk about guys that are just going to freaking bang, it's these two right here, and they have just been so phenomenal so far in their UFC run. I'm kind of upset that they're pit against each other so soon, but I love this fight. I think it's great. This is one of those fights that I feel confident in saying expect a knockout.
Yeah, that fight just screams action and violence. Like I can't wait to check that one out. Ben, what's one that you want to give a special spotlight on?
I would say Drew Dober versus Terrence McKinney. I already liked Drew Dober versus what's his name?
Rick Glenn.
Thank
Ricky
you.
Glenn,
Against Rick Glenn. But now McKinney steps up, coming off of, I mean, he's one of the hottest like prospects in the UFC right now. Just, you know, 2 scorching fast finishes, flexing different parts of his game. It's rare that you get a late notice step up opponent and the odds contract from like minus 290 to like minus 150. So that's people feeling the different threat that he poses to Dober and just how hot McKinney is right now. That should be a great fight.
All right. Jay, what is one that you want to highlight?
I specifically was going to skip over McKinney because I knew Ant was excited about it.
Oh, I got another one in mind.
Oh, good. Well, I'm about to take it then.
Okay.
Because you know what happens. You know, he will be entering his 33rd career fight, and Alex Caceres is on the longest win streak of his career right now. He has won 5 fights in a row, and it is shocking, and it makes you wonder. Okay. When you were a kid, you may or may not have heard guidance counselors say you have so much potential, or middle school teachers, you have so much potential. That was Alex Caceres in the octagon. Is he going to put it together? Can he put it together? He beats Sergio Pettis, and then Uriah Faber manhandles him, and he loses a bunch of fights. And he beats up on Cole Miller, and we go, maybe he's going to make the step. And then he loses a bunch of awkward fights, and then Kron gracies him. And so right now he's on this win streak, and he's going up against a legit test in Sadiq Youssef that I know Ant was very excited to talk about. So Ant, I want you to take it from here.
You know what? Thank you for giving me a little grace there. This is such an intriguing fight. Not only just the names attached to it, and Sadiq Youssef being one of the more interesting prospects, in my opinion. Hit the wrong button. Sorry. Caceres's run is very underrated. His winning streak. But the fact that Caceres, even in fights that he's supposed to lose, that he's supposed to get blown out in, that never really happens. He always finds a way to make it a dogfight and I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to do with someone who is very likely to be his far athletic superior in that cage, and certainly has a youth advantage. I'm really, really, really intrigued by this fight, and this is probably my standout. But in the interest of me just bringing something new to the table, I'll talk very briefly about the co-main event between Marlon Moraes and Song Yadong, or Yadong Song. Not only will be a great opportunity to get off more dick jokes on Twitter, it also is going to be a pretty serious, shit or get off the pot moment for Moraes. Like, this man was the former WSOF champ, came very close to winning the UFC title, and has since had a serious downhill spiral. Aside from the Aldo split decision win, which got Aldo a title shot, strangely enough. I really want to see where the ceiling is on Yadong. Can he
hang? Can Yadong
erect
hang
himself to the challenge?
Like, yeah, will he come out swinging? Is he still an up and comer?
You guys are not going to make it on the UFC broadcast tweeting like this and talking like this. Don't.
I will never. Like, I'm sure I'm muted.
The last time they actually featured one of my tweets, it actually was a dumb joke, which I found really funny. Like, all the serious stuff I've said, and they pick like the silliest joke to put on there.
Featured on Saturday night with the.
I was.
You were, but it was like up down. It was like super fast, and I was like, "Oh, really?" And they took it down. I think it was about the non-corner stoppage thing, and they. Took
really? Oh, I didn't even. I must have like blinked in something and missed it, because
that's how fast it went up and went down. So.
Oh yeah.
You can't read it fully.
Are we talking about Song Yadong still?
Oh, beautiful play. Just wonderful, Jay. So I think that's probably the best place to end things, because this is only going to go downhill, and chances are we're going to get off the recording and continue the madness off air. So big shout out to Kristen. Thank you so much for joining the panel. As always, you're welcome anytime. And if you're itching to get on the show because you got something to get off your chest, jump in anytime. We're always happy to see you. Of course, Jay, Ben, every week holding it down. Much thanks, much love to those two gentlemen. You can find their work on sherdog.com. There will be fight night coverage. I'm sure there'll be coverage of the other events going on outside the UFC. So I'm pretty sure Jay is doing play-by-play a couple times this week. So check that out. And Ben is going to have some pre- and post-fight stuff for you as well. Kristen, check her work out on the Bloody Elbow. I was about to say my old outlet. I was about to say Body Lock, like it doesn't exist anymore. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace. Couldn't come up with a Song Yadong joke that quick.